Guten Abend, hier ist Else Rosbach. Ich bin eine, so, Denkern? Okay. Guten Abend und willkommen zu dieser sehr wichtigen Veranstaltung, finde ich, als mit Vertreter der US-Whistleblower-Bewegung gegen Drohnen und auch mit ein hervorragender Experte Afghan, der sehr eng in Verbindung mit der Situation steht. Mein Name ist Else Rosbach, ich bin deutsche Amerikanerin und ich wollte erstmal die deutschen Teilnehmer sagen, schnell, dass man interpretation, I'm explaining, excuse me, to people, the Germans, just how to get into this event to see here the German interpretation track, and then I'll be doing the rest in English. Okay, so es ist hier unten Interpretation und dann klickt man hier rauf und dann kann man die Sprache nehmen, dass man, worin man recorden möchte. No, not recorden, Entschuldigung, gucken möchte und hören möchte. Und dabei diejenigen, die Deutsch hören, haben die Dolmetscher sind Sophie Kunze und Eva Karnowski und sie werden ihre Stimmen hören. Und unsere Stimmen werden sie nicht hören, aber unsere Videos mit den ursprünglichen Aufnahmen auf Englisch werden auch später präsentiert. Das können Sie dann mal sehen. Dankeschön. Jetzt wollte ich ein bisschen erklären, warum ich und andere die Drohnenkampagne gegründet haben. Das war in 2013. Also jeder hat natürlich eine persönliche Geschichte dazu und ich auch. Also ich bin Deutsch-Amerikanerin, war mein Vater, der war Deutscher, der war auch eine Weile als Junge in Hitlerjugend und so weiter. Die sind mein Vater ist schon 38 aus Deutschland, 39 in den USA und dort auch gestorben. Er hat Amerikanerin, meine Mutter, so weiter. Und oh, mein Video anschalten, oh mein Gott. Okay. Muss ich wieder anfangen oder muss ich wieder anfangen, ja? Jetzt bin ich, Entschuldigung. Hallo? Weiß nicht, was ich... Oh, it's okay? Oh, fun. Okay, soll ich wieder anfangen? Also ist mir nicht klar. Okay, go. Heißt go wieder machen. I'm sorry, everyone. This is the first time I've hosted actually a Zoom webinar, and I thought you heard me before. And okay, I guess you have heard how to get into. People have heard how to get into this presentation. I'm very old. I'm new to digitals, and but because of this long history, I have a feeling that I know a lot why drone warfare is important and why, in particular, the appearance of people who have been in the U.S. military or even in the security forces who tell us about it is crucial. And they are the key resistors that we have today. My background goes back, as I said before, to my father. My name is Elsa von Lohengrin, the German opera by Wagner. My father was born in Dresden, and he came to the U.S. in 43. So I had, even in my childhood, the atmosphere of a war with my father being German in our family, married to an American, and so forth. So I grew up thinking about war, even as a young child, what it meant. And then in the 60s, I came to Germany to study, and I got involved with the GI movement here as a student activist in Berlin. I first studied philosophy, and I became a filmmaker because I was so moved by all the pictures that we had at that time on television of the victims of the Vietnam War. And I became deeply engaged with so many people in the US and around the world against the Vietnam War. And among the things we did is we had GI newspapers in Berlin. People who know about it would know these papers, where it's at, up against the wall and forward. And there were other papers in Heidelberg, all over Europe, of course, Asia, Japan, and tremendous GI resistance developed, particularly led by the African-American soldiers, but many white and others were also involved. And this was such a strong resistance movement that they began to refuse, even in Vietnam, to carry out orders. Some of them even killed their commanders in the field. And they played a huge role in enabling the Vietnamese to get the US to depart Vietnam and not even leave a military base there. So this is part of our heritage in the US peace movement, that the veterans play a key role, are a key voice for us. First it was the Vietnam veterans, and then later it's also added to them are the Iraq and Afghanistan war veterans, who are among the leadership of the US American peace movement to this day. And anyway, in this work, we also could not have done it in Europe without the assistance, the strong assistance in Germany of the German student movement, which officially helped deserters and resistors and led out and helped them with notices, although it was actually illegal at the time in Germany, to say, if you soldiers want to desert, we will help you get to Sweden and so forth. So this, in the international work, this work closely together is critical. So then I went to after the Vietnam things and the students there, I knew incidentally Rudy Dutschke, all those people very well. I then, who was a student leader, an iconic student leader, I came to the United States, and I had also been thrilled to hear about the great American labor resistance, which I was amazed I had never heard of in the 1930s. This was like the 1960s, 30 years later, it was censored. And it seemed to me, in the sense, practically censored, not by the government, but there were no films really, there was no school teaching and all. So I started to try to do a massive labor history series. I was working at WGBH on the Nova series, and about a history of American labor, and there was a lot of resistance, but ultimately 40 unions supported it. Everyone also was willing to work at half rate, whatever, to make this film, which now some of you can see. It's just been released. It's on the Criterion channel if you're in the US, and other channels, or Blue to Brute. I was the producer and co-writer with the wonderful African-American writers, Ron Milner and Leslie Lee, and directed by Bill Duke. So this is part of my anti-racist thing, or that all of us have been involved, but it was just my little contribution to that. And then when I came back to Europe, partly because I couldn't do this kind of work in the US, in the atmosphere there anymore, that I came back to my old friends at film school and all. And we then started helping with a group of Americans and Germans, helping soldiers here in Germany, US soldiers who were resisting, deserting, and so forth, or also seeking asylum. The case of Andre Shepard, the case of Augustine Aguayo, a pacifist who deserted from Schweinfurt and accompanied his campaign to the US and back to Germany. And but as we went, and so that's when I joined the DFG-VK. That's the German Peace Society and United War Resistors, affiliated with the War Resisters International. And accompanied with them because, yeah, stop video, okay. Yeah, okay. What is this? Stop video, okay. Start video, okay, it's good. I don't want to go on too long, but the reason of this history is that, first of all, I just want to say the DFG-VK, you see the broken rifle. That was the symbol that drew me. They helped with GI resistance and how to also a GI hotline, getting cards around the bases of Germany. But more and more, it became the drone wars. So the US had started drone strikes in Afghanistan in 2001 in order to, originally Clinton wanted to have something like that because he wanted to assassinate Osama bin Laden. It was against US law at the time. So he put it in the hands of the CIA, and then they did the first drone strike against Mullah Omar, but they didn't actually manage to hit him. And ultimately the US Army took over the Afghan drone war, as far as I understand. Our witnesses will know more about that than I do, far more. But in any case, it became that more and more that with all the resistance that we had and so forth, since I became involved with the drone issue, which was in 2012, I have not yet heard of a drone pilot who resisted orders. There probably are some. There have been many, however, who have regretted and who have spoken out. And only because of them, people like Brandon Bryant or even Edward Snowden. Do we even know about the drone war as much as we do? And do we even know that Germany plays a key role in this at the air base Ramstein and AFRICOM? So many of you will know this as well, but we only know it because of the resistors. Now we have big demonstrations there. So this is a key issue. And what happened is we founded, I and many other peace activists, I was already involved with the DFG-VK doing DFG-VK. I'm sorry, I'm switching to German. We were doing this resistance, and I ultimately changed our GI resistance working group to a drone working group. That's where the real important things were and the decisions being made about really peace, war, and the future of mankind. And so this was founded in March 2013 in Germany and Hanover. It was my bringing it in. I was inspired after being involved in the big demonstration against NATO in Chicago in 2012, where I was involved with that. Then I went to California and went to a demonstration at the Beale Air Base and accidentally got arrested. And I came back and said, then Germany, the head of the CSU, that's Chancellor Merkel's party, and her defense minister, de Maizière, said he wanted to have armed drones for Germany. And I said to my friends here in the German peace movement, you know, this is a terrible weapon. I knew it was a terrible weapon because the resistance already in the US and in fact in Great Britain, where they were already had countries that were using the drones, and people started to take attention, and a lot more people who are a lot more experienced than I am, which came into it. Also the information Stelle Militarisierung, headed by Tobias Flüger, and came into this, and there was a big founding meeting, about 100 people in Hanover in 2013. I wrote an article about it in Common Dreams at that time. Germany launches a drone campaign. We called ourselves the Drone Campaign. Some people said we should have called ourselves the Anti-Drone Campaign. But anyway, that's how it came out. It was a democratic decision. And so then one of our first things was to have a meeting in December 2013 internationally, bringing US peace activists, British, Chris Cole, who's been in our program, others from different countries, Sweden, I don't think we got France, Netherlands. I have to look at our guest list back then. But, and our goal was that we knew we wanted to really stop the weaponizing of drones internationally with the help of the German parliament and German government. We wanted to get a control also how surveillance drones are used. Some people wanted to ban those as well. And we put together a global action day that took place in October 2014 that involved about 30, 40 events in Germany, but also internationally, another 30 or 40 for the English, mostly English was the language. Even in Palestine, although we didn't know about it, found it afterwards, Gaza, there were demonstrations on Global Action Day, October 4th, 2014. And so that was our mission. And since then, I mean, at that time, only the US, Great Britain, on behalf of the US to a large degree, and Israel had killed with drones. Now we see that drones are proliferating around the world in a frightening way. We see that the drone use of the US has skyrocketed through Obama, through now even more through Trump, has become ever more intransparent. Trump has taken away the protections of transparency of the Obama regime. And Europe is wanting to compete, China also. Our hope at the time seem to have failed. By the way, in 2013, we tried to see every parliamentary group in the German parliament. And we had at our table at the meeting representatives of the left and Green Party, of the Green Party, and also at that time, Congresswoman or a member of parliament, Ute Fink-Kramer, a great peaked astronaut of the Social Democratic Party. We also tried to get a meeting with Merkel. We tried to get a meeting with, the defense ministry. We didn't manage to do that. But whenever they invite us, we try to exchange thoughts. Anyway, this was founded, and then actually it turned out it was the position of they might be telling you I'm going too long here. I don't know. I don't what they're saying. Stop video. Okay, stop video. Start video. Okay. I'm going to wind up because we're almost where we are right now. Basically, what happened was then that the SPD, actually before we founded the drone campaign in March 2013, they had already made some big inquiries in the parliament with a big question by the Social Democratic Party in the fall, I think it was October 2012, signed by all of the major SPD people that are still in effect, the Steinmeier and all that. What is here? Let's see. Someone is calling me. Hold on. Hello, what is? Okay, stop talking, okay? Okay. Well, I think I have to go on and just say that we had actually should we go? That's it, I'm called off.
Okay, Elsa, thanks a lot for your introduction. I think I will continue from here and talk first of all a bit about this event and what we are going to talk about. Let me first introduce myself. My name is Imran Feroz. I'm a journalist based in Germany. I was born and raised in Austria and I have Afghan roots. I'm covering the war on terror in Afghanistan and elsewhere for almost 10 years, and drone warfare is one of the main topics I'm writing about. I've written a book in German, which was published in 2017. It's called Tod per Knopfdruck, or Death by Pushing the Button, which is mainly focusing on the civilian victims of drone warfare. And I have the honor to moderate this event today with two honorable guests I want to introduce to you. First, it's Lisa Ling. Lisa Ling used to be a drone technician and became known as a whistleblower for leaving the drone program and talking about it, and also kind of exposing it, of course. Some of you might know the documentary movie National Bird. Lisa appeared there, I think it was 2 or 3 years ago. Please correct me if I'm wrong there, but I recommend that movie. Great movie, a critical movie about drone warfare and all the problems behind it. So thanks for being here, Lisa. And the other one is Sean Westmoreland, another former technician who also used to work in Afghanistan like Lisa, and who also became very critical towards his work and left the drone program. And he's joining us now too. And we will have hopefully a very healthy and critical debate about what is happening for almost 2 decades. As Elsa already mentioned, it's been a while since the first drone strike took place in Afghanistan in October 2001, when the Americans invaded Afghanistan and tried to hunt down Mullah Muhammad Omar, the leader of the Taliban. And back then, they thought that this allegedly precise weapon would kill the Taliban leader and would revolutionize warfare in general. But actually the very first drone strike was a failure, and it wasn't Mullah Omar who was killed. Other people have been killed back then, and since then this scenario happened again and again, not just in Afghanistan but also in several other countries like Pakistan, Yemen, Somalia, and elsewhere. But Afghanistan used to be the most drone bombed country all over the world. And I think the experience of our guests in this context is also important, because both of them used to work there. And contrary to many people who criticize drone warfare but do not really know much about the technique and all these things, technical details behind it, they really know what they are talking about. And for that reason, and also in the context of the German drone debate, it's very important to hear their voices. But there's also another voice that should be heard, and I'm observing the drone debate since it started now, and what we never see are people who are affected by these strikes by the drones. So I want to use a short clip as an introduction, so that you people could have a glimpse of what is taking place in Afghanistan and elsewhere for so many years, and how the people are suffering. We have, this clip has German subtitles, but it's just really short, and after that I will start the debate and also translate what this man is saying. So give me a second here to do that. Okay, so sorry. Okay. Sorry, I'm here in front of two computers. It's a bit confusing sometimes. So this man was an Afghan villager from Wardak province near Kabul, the capital of Afghanistan. His name is Kabir Aluzai, and I met him almost 4 years ago in 2017. And Mr. Aluzai lives in a village which has been haunted by American drones for years. And he lost his own brother in 2015 when a drone strike attacked him. His brother was driving a car. He was a fruit seller, and both of them were buying some fruits or delivering them to some place. And Kabir, the man you just saw, was in a separate car, and Karim, his brother, was in front of him a couple of meters. And then a Hellfire rocket hit his car and killed him. And what Kabir in this video just described was the situation in his village, because in the village, the people, especially the children, what he was talking about mainly were the children who have become so familiar to the drones that not just to the drones, but also to other American aircraft, fighting jets, helicopters, Black Hawk helicopters, all these things. They could defer all these things, and they could say, okay, now this is coming or that is coming, and we can't play outside. Their whole daily life has been influenced by these things, especially by the drones, and all of them were traumatized. And from the one side by the drones and everything, and on the other side, this was a Taliban-controlled area, so the civilians were in the middle of all these war developments. And yeah, unfortunately, we don't hear often from them. So I thought to use this as an introduction to our talk. And what I know is that you, Lisa, you also visited Afghanistan after you left your work, and you met some of these people. Is that correct? And yeah, I would like to start talking to you about this. Maybe you can share some of your experiences before we come to your actual work and what you did.
What I know about the Afghan people is that they're very resilient and very compassionate. Even today, I get teary-eyed talking about them. They knew what I did, and they forgave me. And I didn't go there asking for forgiveness. I didn't go there, expecting anything. But what I found was a very compassionate, brave, resilient people who, like all of us, don't want war. They don't want to see, and they don't understand when drones fly over, innocent civilians get killed. And in the film National Bird, one man said something that was just incredibly touching. He said that basically the Americans say that we can see like a needle on the ground. And why do we kill women and children? It's a very valid question. And it brings to light that the technology is not everything that we're told.
Yeah. So you said they forgave you for what exactly? I mean, what was your job when you were part of the drone program? Can you describe this a bit?
So I was a technologist. I worked on some parts of security. I worked on almost all aspects of this huge monstrosity of a system called the drone program. It's meant to be interoperable. It's meant to, the end game is basically to have a mesh network that encompasses many countries, and working collaboratively on different data sets. And it's supposed to take us away from the messiness, the horror, the terror of war. And that's a myth. There is no machine that can do that. There is no technology that is going to solve our human problems. What we need more of is compassion, not more weapons placed on drones.
Yeah. And you worked in Afghanistan, right? Where have you been there?
So I didn't actually work in Afghanistan. That's the nature of this program. You can be anywhere in the world and work anywhere in the world. Borders don't matter anymore. And the threshold for war is exponentially lowered because we're not seeing troops transported, because we're not seeing coffins come home of our people, because we're not seeing any of those things that are normally what we find disgusting about war, the death, the destruction, and all of that. Even the terminology has been relegated to these clean and sanitized words, when what is really happening overseas is murder. I mean, we're talking about getting information from a people, some of whom don't know the day they were born. The regular things that we consider personally identifiable information doesn't really exist in some of these countries that we're droning.
Mm-hmm.
And so my question has always been and always will be, how can we know? I don't believe that we can know. I don't believe that the threshold for criminality in the United States is beyond the shadow of a doubt. The threshold for killing an Afghan is far less. Why? Their life means nothing less than my own. Their lives are just as important as anybody wearing our uniform is. I just don't believe that putting weapons on drones is right. And I think that it promotes killing innocents, mothers, fathers, children.
Yeah.
It doesn't save soldiers.
Yeah, I think many people still don't know, all these things behind the curtains, how the whole program works, how people are being recruited to work, for the Air Force or for the CIA, and how people, what kind of working places do people have. So, for example, how have you been recruited? When was that? What kind of motivation did you have? And what was the environment you worked in?
I joined the military as a nurse. I wanted to help people. I wanted to make a difference. That's why I joined. I drank the Kool-Aid, basically. I had no idea. They found out that I knew about technology and knew about computing, and so I was transferred from the Army to the air side of the house because, we joke about it now, but the Army's second layer of encryption is the M16, and the Air Force actually used encryption. And so if you wanted to learn about technology, that's the branch of service you would join. And basically, I didn't know. When you join the military, you do know that it's possible that you will end up killing someone. You know this. But when I joined the military in 1991, I had absolutely no idea that you would end up being able to kill someone from the other side of the world. It wouldn't be defensive. Armed drones are not defensive weapons. So, basically that's how it happened. I didn't know that, I didn't know that the same skill set that helps you use your home PC, or that helps you put together your network at home, or that helps you hop on the internet, or all of those other things, I didn't know that those skills were going to end up being the same skills used to kill. It's that simple.
Yeah. Sean, Lisa just described what Afghans told her about, the Americans and the supporters say that, or they kind of want to spread this image that they can see everything through their drones and that they can even see needle. It's kind of this Hollywood image you often have when you see drone operators in the movie flying around some desert. You see some people, with beard and with turban running around, and then they see everything. So why do you think, Sean, is this image so wrong?
Well, initially, it was very wrong for sure. The Predators footage was quite grainy. It was black and white, and you can probably make out a shape of a person. Because of the bandwidth limitations that were in place with the satellite infrastructure that was there, and the type of the communications that existed at the time. As time progressed, of course, more infrastructure has gone up. There's been more larger amounts of traffic have been allowed to pass through this infrastructure. So it's it's still not to the point where you can see the head of a needle. Like that's I mean, if the U.S. is claiming that it can do that, then it's quite it's very mistaken. I mean, at best, on a clear day, you can maybe see like a face of somebody. Like, I mean, but it's part of the propaganda of these drones to claim that they're extremely the video feeds that they're getting are extremely high in quality. They're extremely like the targeting systems are extremely precise, like we never miss, whatnot. But like anything can go wrong. Like in Murphy's Law, the more technological something becomes, the more things that can happen. Like more things can go wrong. As time goes on, we're seeing, like, of course, more drones go out there, and of course more technological layers are being put on top of all of this stuff. So like anytime you have a precise measuring tool, it needs to be, calibrated properly. Like you can have something that's, tuned just a little bit off, and it could cause, a mistake to happen, somewhere. You can have a program that is being used that isn't able to deal with the parameters that it's given, because like people and reality is very complex. There's never two situations that are exactly the same. So there's a lot that can happen, on a technological side, but also just in, just the human dimension, how they interface with the technology itself, how they, like the decision-making processes and the social dimensions of how these things are being conducted. All of that contributes to whether or not, like, the missile hits the target that the U.S. intended, or whether that target was even the target. Like as we see with al-Baghdadi. I mean, we've like allegedly killed him 6 times already. Yeah. I mean, there's been article after article that's come out. We've killed Baghdadi. Well, I mean, it's getting to the point where I'm just like, have we really? Like,
this was also happening in Afghanistan and Pakistan. So often you had all these ghost Taliban leaders because they have been killed, and then 2 weeks later you see they're still alive, and then 2 months later you see another report, he has been killed, and then 6 months later you see he's still alive, and people never ask who has been killed instead of these people.
It's there's that, and then I guess they just rely on the media cycle of like, a lot of people have attention to the news like goldfish. They have a 5 second memory. But I mean, yeah, you can find these stories over and over again, and it's ridiculous. Like, that they're trying to, sell this precision narrative when, there's all of these variables that can be put in place. I mean, the difference between a drone and a human being with a gun is like you point the gun and you see the person that you're shooting at, and, you're there, you're in the environment you're in. With a drone, you're looking at things in 2 dimensions. Like you're trying to infer what's happening on the ground based off of like whatever, you know, sensor feeds that you're getting, however the computer assistance is telling you, you know, they're providing advisory support to the analysts, to the operators. It's I mean, there's so many complex layers that aren't being paid attention to right now. Whereas like the debate has just been fixated on, you know, okay, we have a sensor operator, we have a drone, you know, a drone pilot. It's not, it's much more complex than that. And people need to understand that, you know, it's not two people from halfway around the world that are, you know, making this happen. It's, you know, potentially dozens to hundreds of people at any given time, like have touched the information that goes into the drone strike.
Yeah. And what was your work exactly in this chain, Sean? Maybe you can explain this a bit. And where did you work? Also mainly in the US, or you have been to Afghanistan, I think, right?
No, I went to Afghanistan. I didn't join the military expecting to join the drone program or be a part of the drone program. I mean, I barely knew what drones were at the time. You know, I went in, you know, it was just my, like, father was in the Air Force, and, you know, I felt like it was a familial expectation. I felt like, you know, I needed to serve my country, and, you know, I just wanted to do my part. I did know that we were involved in a war. I was somewhat critical of the war in Iraq, but I was also under this impression that, you know, I needed to, you know, like, it's one thing to criticize like what your country's doing. It's another thing to participate in what it is and being able to, like, you know, make that decision yourself. What's wrong with it? You know, you know, I did go in naive like everybody does. But I mean, I went to South Korea first. We maintained like the air picture over the South Korean peninsula, which is just like anything that's in the air. Like we, you know, like had ways of tracking it, and you know, and like any missile launch, anything, just like we maintained the infrastructure for that to happen. Then I went to Germany. I was part of an air control squadron. And, you know, our job was to go anywhere in the world within 2 weeks notice and set up, you know, communications over the country. What we did in Afghanistan was pretty convoluted in a way. It was, you know, we weren't just working with drones, we were also working with conventional aircraft. I was going between different sites, you know, on base and connecting them. You know, like as I'm doing that, I'm making, you know, some of my own observations, like, you know, go to the 60-second, hey, there's some Google servers there. What are they doing? You know, like like you think of somebody like a technician and you're like, you know, you're not doing anything, you're not killing anyone, but what you're doing is you're setting up and you're facilitating the capacity for other people to use that technology to do it, you know, with very like, you know, they don't understand like the pitfalls that could go into that. You know, I remember the day that my NCOIC, my boss, like informed us that we were killing bad guys now. You know, like my impression of bombing is, well, a bomb can't be precise, you know. Like there's always going to be collateral damage. So I mean, you know, he said that, you know, he had a big smile on his face and just like, we're doing something good here, you know. We're killing bad guys, you know. And you know, that that brought up a lot of questions in my mind. You know, I had an aversion to killing in the first place. Like, I grew up religious. You know, I believe, you know, thou shalt not kill. It's in every Abrahamic faith, you know, 10 Commandments. But I didn't quite grasp the scale that was happening, you know, and what that actually meant, you know. Like, you're looking at a area of responsibility the size of Afghanistan, and you're looking at tiny dots all over a map of Afghanistan flying around as people are directing the aircraft to go to bomb people. And it's, you know, from my young mind, I mean, of course, like, I didn't have 20 years in, I wasn't, you know, I didn't have the overview of the entire system. I had, you know, a sliver of it, but from that sliver, I saw a lot that terrified me. Not just about how, you know, people can do these bureaucratic and very, like, seemingly banal tasks, and it could have these, like, incredible impacts. And that, you know, we don't really have a sort of way to grasp the impact of our own, like, our own
day to day.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, this is the day-to-day stuff. Like, and it's the routine tasks that go into killing, like, that allow people to do these things. And of course, these people who are actually, like, conducting the missions, you know, they're trusting people like us to do everything right. And, you know, like, it's the way the military works is just you're always sort of, like, trusting somebody else to provide you the things that you need. But at any point, you know, there could be, like, a failure there. And yeah.
When did you notice that what you're doing, and this is a question to both of you, when did you notice that what you're doing is fundamentally wrong?
The moment I looked at the UN reports.
When was that?
That was after I received my performance report and our unit award, basically, like, congratulating us for assisting in 2,400 close air support missions, you know, and like 200 plus enemy kills, you know, and the fact that I wasn't, you know, not I nor anybody else who asked, I don't know, was given any information on civilian casualties. Because, like, if we're gonna take credit for something, you kind of just you should know the whole story, you know.
How long were you there, Sean, and doing the Afghanistan mission?
Just 6 months.
So I just want to point something out. He assisted in 2,400 missions in just 6 months. Those numbers are not being reported, but every fight is felt in terror by the people on the ground.
Yeah, absolutely.
So yeah, it's I mean, the UN reports essentially stated there was 300 plus civilians that had died due to airstrikes within our area of responsibility. And that was when I found out about that, I vomited. It was not something, as something that I thought I would be prepared to deal with, and I wasn't. But I had decided after that, to try to understand, and sort of reconnect with humanity. And I mean, I didn't go back to Afghanistan. I almost did. I hitchhiked around the world, went through Central Asia, almost went down through Tajikistan into the Wakhan corridor. Yeah. I ended up studying international relations and just trying to, get an idea of the decision-making processes that kind of lead us, people like me, to go do things like that. And I wasn't impressed,
Yeah.
A lot of reasons seem quite petty, like in retrospect. And it's just like we all have one life to live, and our impact on this world is like what we do with it. And if we're going to be using that life to just like destroy others, like, sure, you can go home at night, you can like play with your kids, you can go live your days out and just ignore everything. But I don't know, at some point, like maybe like, if there's a God or there's not a God, you're gonna like have to think about that at some point. And I just like, I decided that, the most I can do is try to prevent this stuff from happening in the future. And try to, do what I can to set the world on a better trajectory. That's about where I'm at with that. I don't know.
Yeah, thanks for that, Sean. Lisa, maybe you can describe what kind of consequences could you and Sean face, and other whistleblowers face for, leaving the program and speaking against it.
So when I left the program, my term of service was up. So I want to make that perfectly clear. And I didn't get the award that I received until my service was up. That explained to me just what the numbers of people were. And I also want to say that the weapons that are on drones are accurate. Laser guided munitions are accurate. Absolutely. They will hit where the laser is pointed. Mm-hmm. But that's not the question that we need to be asking. What we need to be asking is, who picks where the laser points? Exactly. Who is responsible? If I have a weapon in my hand and I go to war, which I have deployed overseas, and I'll tell you right now that if I had a choice between the two, I would deploy to a war zone overseas physically rather than do this in the drone program. Because if I have a weapon in my hand and I'm the one with my finger on the trigger, I am ultimately responsible for what happens. In the drone program, there's not one person that you can say is ultimately responsible for the death of individual, innocent, non-combatant human beings that are on the ground. There's nobody. And I also want to bring this back to the German military. Right now, the German military members do not know what it is like to carry the lives of 121,000 people on your shoulders for participating in something for only 2 years. I do.
Yeah.
I don't want the German, they say this is to protect German soldiers.
Sure. Yeah, Sean already mentioned, the whole drone propaganda, which started in the US, and it already took over the heads of German politicians and military officials, and they just believe all these propaganda lines, precise weapons, killing terrorists, protecting troops. So why did that happen? Why are they so naive? I think they are naive, because I have to repeat it so often, but why do they believe this kind of propaganda so easily?
I think it's because we want to believe that we're like a moral, the shining house on the hill is what our popular culture tells us about the United States of America. We like to think that what we do in war is just. I don't believe there's a just war. That's my personal opinion. Basically, I think that, the people who tell us about artificial intelligence are the people who create it and who sell it. It's for the same reason that we remember the names of Coca-Cola, the colors on like fast food restaurants, and all of those tropes that have been fed to us consistently for extended periods of time. We want to believe that technology can fix human frailty, but the human condition is such that it never will. It never can. There's no amount of technology that will change things. And what this technology is doing with the new weapon system that Germany is getting, I think it's called the FCAS, with that system being interconnected with all the other systems and all of this stuff, it is lowering the threshold for war. And right now, I was in Afghanistan, and there was this big like water pump that USAID spent buku bucks on. It had like just a lot of money on, and it had all of these beautiful pristine parts. And the Afghans that were there near this device enclosed it in a protective shelter. They knew that it was valuable. They knew that it could help them if they could actually afford to use it. The pipes they weren't plumbed to the neighborhoods that were supposed to receive water. And Germany came in and saved the day. And to talk to the Afghans that received this help from the German people, I mean, it just, I get teary-eyed. It just warms my heart. They came in and they put in a gravity feed water distribution system. And they went with the inexpensive hand pumps that have been working in Afghanistan for a long time. So every morning they turn on this generator for 15 minutes because they can afford the fuel that it takes to do that. It fills up the water distribution system, and this neighborhood has clean water to drink. The Germans did that. The Germans are known for doing that. Once the Germans put weapons on their drones, they will not be known for that. They will be known for something worse and different. And we have a term in the United States called blowback. And basically it's a kind of karma, right?
Yeah.
It's a kind of, you get what you serve, that kind of thing. And right now, the Germans are looked at fondly by many of the Afghan people that I met and that I talked to.
Yeah.
Once they get weapons on drones, even though, in reality, it's a small community. A person at one end of Afghanistan finds something out, and somebody way at the other end of the country will know about it. And not that slowly either. So, the things, it's just, weaponizing drones is the wrong way to go. It's not going to serve any of us. It doesn't serve any of us in any way.
Yeah. You also said something very powerful in the past, which was often similar to what I saw on the ground in Afghanistan, and what I wrote about and still write about, is that we're not fighting against terrorism, we are creating it. And this is actually something that even many Afghan officials, from the Afghan government side, for example, allies of the Americans, they don't want to get this, that, there's so many rural communities who have been terrorized by the drones that, not everyone, but a lot of them, maybe not most of them, but still, there is a number that people were being radicalized by such kinds of attacks, and that people who lost their family members by such attacks, that that some of them would join militant groups on the ground. And many Taliban leaders themselves said, listen, we know how to get away from these drones, but the locals don't. And when they get hit and when they get killed, they come to us. We pay for their funeral costs and stuff. And some of them also say, yeah, we will fight with you. And this is something that is really often ignored, I think, that actually this kind of warfare doesn't erase these militant groups, it just makes them stronger.
I agree. I mean, from my vantage point, I mean, even when I was in Afghanistan, I wasn't afraid of the Afghan people. I was afraid of us. I was afraid of the things that were flying over our heads. Drones are terror. And the fact of the matter is that unarmed drones early on, and this is talked about in the film National Bird, they surveilled. And a lot of the people believed that they were being protected by them. There was some sort of a comfort that was gleaned by this. But the minute weapons got put on drones, all of the drones became terror. Because from the ground, you don't know. You don't know if that noise is from a drone with a weapon or not a weapon, or you don't know. And so what that does is it creates terror, and this terror is ruining communities. I mean, people all over Afghanistan heard about weddings and funerals and soccer games and children on bicycles. Every single person in Afghanistan, when there is a drone overhead, has a chance of being killed. Imagine if that was somebody out there, somebody living in a rural and farming community out there, going out with their grandmother or their son or their daughter to go out and farm, and then this noise happens above them. And they don't know whether they're going to look to their right and see their father, their mother, or their grandmother in pieces in the next 30 seconds. How would you feel? Wouldn't you join any group that promised you they could prevent it from being like that? I mean, everything that I'm talking about today is available online. It is all open source information. I am not telling anybody any secrets. I am not breaking any laws. But what I am speaking is the truth. And the truth is, I was part of a country that propagated terror during a war on terror. And it doesn't feel good. And it won't feel good to the German military. And they can't know it yet, but they will. If there are weapons put on drones, it's an offensive weapon. The people on the ground, whether they're a mother, a father, an innocent, a soldier, whoever, cannot retreat. There is no uniform that they can wear that will exempt them from a strike. There is nothing. And these things are flying over them hours and days and weeks and months and years at a time. People need to understand that this is terror.
Thank you, Lisa. Sean, one question to you. One question that I often hear after drone talks from the audience. You know, people ask if the drones would be a good thing if the cameras, you know, when the cameras were HD or 4K and you could see everything. You could see it so much better, you know, that you can really, like in those movies, that you can see what is really happening on the ground. That, do you think that in such a case, I know that's kind of a provocative question, but do you think in such a case these weapons would be good or better, or that we can use that? Or that we should
it's
trust?
not really, yeah, it's not really that provocative of a question, actually. I mean, you know, even if you had the ability to see, you know, like the hole inside a needle, you know, you still have the issue of not having, you know, people with experience in the cultures they're working with on the grounds, you know, like at best, maybe you have a Marine who's, you know, a pilot, you know, like you have an analyst that has like a family background, you know, in those places. Like they were raised their entire lives in the United States. Like they can maybe speak the language, but they don't understand what reality is like on the ground. And, you know, you can have people making decisions to like find out who's good or bad, or, you know, by whatever standards we want to put it at. But at the end of the day, we're, you know, like these targeted strikes that are occurring, I mean, they're not it's not like, the point isn't to, they're not getting the big picture view.
Yeah,
of things.
Yeah.
There isn't the big picture view there. Like, I mean, you can have entirely rational actions within an irrational framework. Like, and by having that, by its very nature, those rational actions become irrational. Like, you know, you're like, you can look for these targets, but you know, whether or not you should kill them in that instance, you know, is not, like, it's not.
Yeah, maybe in addition from my side, what I experienced there, for example, when I was in Nangarhar province in eastern Afghanistan for my drone research, I and a reporting colleague of mine, we had a situation in a village. We interviewed civilians and we interviewed members of the Taliban who controlled the area. And the Taliban commander, he brought some of his people and we talked to them a couple of times. And then he said, you know, now it's better to go because maybe the drone hits you too. And in that moment, me and my colleague, we knew, because he's also an Afghan, we knew that if such thing happens, that the drone strike kills now all of us together with these Taliban soldiers and some of these local civilians and us, probably in a news report, even in a local Afghan news report in Kabul, we would all be described as Taliban militants. Because at the end of the day, you know, I'm an Afghan, I look like an Afghan, and for many people, unfortunately, that's enough to say. Even, I mean, I also had a lot of cases of people who were just described as Taliban militants or Al-Qaeda militants just because they had a beard and long hair. You know, they saw their corpses and were like, oh, he looks like a Taliban. But actually, you know, many people in these areas, in the region, Afghanistan, Pakistan, also in Yemen and elsewhere, you know, this is not, I mean, you can't do that. You can't just say, okay, he looks like terrorist, so we count him as a terrorist. And actually, this is also what the Americans are doing.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's it's happening on the ground as well. Like, I mean, you have people like performing these things called dead drops where like they'll kill somebody and then plant a weapon on them. I mean, it's like, but I mean, in terms of drones, like, I mean, it's, yeah, like, I guess, you know, that how they say that if you have like a hammer, everything looks like a nail. Like, if you have this tool that, you know, that you can use, like, you know, you just want to hit things with it, but, you know, maybe you don't need a hammer. Maybe you need like, you know, a chisel, or you need something that's, like something that's more precise in order to do the job. Or maybe these problems can be solved without actually resorting to military force in the first place. Like, you know, maybe, you know, Germany's role as opposed to just joining every other nation and, you know, like bombing people, which is ultimately what's going to happen. Because, I mean, you say, like, they say that it's going to be for troop protection. Like, but the issue with that is, you know, at what point is defense? Like, at what point, like, is it, you know, an impending attack from, like, you know, in the next hour, in the next day, in the next week, because things change, you know, like the scope of the mission changes within, you know, just the time frames that are given. Like, if they're doing it a month out, I mean, you're going to have drones flying around neighborhoods, choosing who's, like, you know, who's the next target. And at that point, you know, you're probably getting intelligence from other nations. You're also making a lot of inferences based off of things that, you know, are happening where you don't have anybody on the ground to confirm that, you know, that's who these people are, or if you're just seeing like mirages, you know.
Mhm.
You know, that's a big danger, because you can have a precise instrument that does what you claim it does, but you know, when we're talking about drones, we're not just talking about, you know, the ability to take a laser and make a missile, you know, hit what the laser is pointed at. You're talking about the like the data that you're getting, the quality of the data you're getting, and the ability to interpret that data, and the interpretations that are provided to the people making decisions. And you're also talking about the quality of the decision-making process. Like, if you're given a policy framework that says, you know, okay, we're just going to kill like all these people, I mean, like, you can fulfill the mission, but is that necessarily what needs to happen? Like, you know, from a political standpoint, I mean, you get somebody who's like a war hawk in office or whatnot, and you know, their whole purpose is just to, like, you know, show how big their balls are. You know, it's like not it's not necessarily trying to like solve any problems. It's just to dominate. And you know, and that's the thing too, because it's like, you know, you have different layers to this and how this works, and you have many more layers than just having people like on the grounds, like and
so this brings us to a question that's been asked several times now in the chat about Ramstein.
I wanted to point this out too. Please go ahead, Lisa. Yeah.
So basically, what I would ask people to do, I can't say anything. I don't want to go to prison.
I see.
I mean, it's that very much clear. But these are the questions that we need to be asking all of our policymakers. This is why a bunch of us, I was not included in this, but Sean was, wrote an open letter to our president asking these questions. I mean, this is where the German people come in. This is where people need to stand up. This is why it's important to vote. And I just want to throw that out there, that everyone has a place in this discourse and everyone has a place in changing things.
Thank you, Lisa. I just want to point out that we have around 45 minutes left for this talk, and there are some questions coming in to the audience. You're all welcome to. We
also have some slides we need to discuss.
Exactly. Yeah. Would you like to share them, Sean?
Yeah, I think Lisa has them right now.
All right. Sorry. Yeah, Lisa has them. So please go ahead. Maybe we can tie them to some questions.
Okay. Give me 1 second here.
Yeah, don't worry about it. But to the audience again, just send us your questions and we will answer them. We will try to answer most of them.
I mean, what's happening on Ramstein is you know, it's on Wikipedia now.
Yeah, that's what everyone is asking about Ramstein.
It's on Wikipedia now. I mean, with DGS. Yeah.
It's actually, that's true.
Can you see the screen?
Yes, we can see the screen.
And can you see the 2 coins?
No, not yet.
Oh, the 2 points.
Hold on a minute. Let me. Okay, so only.
If you want, I can also share it.
Okay, and I need to.
Okay, give me seconds.
Okay, no, I just fixed it.
Okay.
Hopefully.
Yeah, just take your time.
Is that working? I think I'm not allowed to.
Now something is working. It's starting. Just wait a second. So now it's again here. But which two points did you mean?
Did you?
We see your browser. We see your browser and a Word document.
How's this?
Yeah, just make it full screen. I mean, total full screen.
There we go.
Yeah, now it works.
Okay.
Yeah, please tell us what we see here. It looks very interesting.
So this coin I was given, I believe in 2011, when I came into my office one day, and they were talking about what the plans were moving forward. And I can show you this coin because it's not, you know, it's not a secret document or anything like that. I believe that it was given to show off what was coming.
Mm-hmm.
So, and this is something that was open source. It was found on the internet, and Sean will tell you more about this.
Yeah, so when we're talking about FCAS, we're talking about more or less what we were working with, like as technicians working on this network. You know, you can kind of get an idea for like how much you know, the massive quantities of details, you know, that like a connected information sharing system like this would have. It's too overwhelming for humans to sort through alone. Sometimes details aren't relevant initially and become important at later dates. Days, months, or years into the future, as I said before. And, you know, to make these details useful, computational algorithms are written into programs that are used to help analysts interpret this information. So by the time decision makers receive this information, it will have been influenced by an untold number of people and through computational processes that they as individuals will barely comprehend. So, you know, I'm just kind of rehashing what I said before, but it's you know, trust in the processes used to make these determinations is the linchpin of any mission to target somebody.
And the other thing to notice on here is that the plan, it looks like from this document, which is done by industry professionals, is for international collaboration. And what I hear in the talks, in the documentation that I've seen and been able to translate from Germany, is that they demand and want some sort of autonomy. And while I'm sure that it is technologically possible to achieve autonomous use of these devices, I don't think, based on this information that I'm looking at in front of me, it is going to be the easier path to take or the path of least resistance.
And I also just want to like point out that, you know, when you're talking about humans and machines and, you know, like these collaborative tools that they're, you know, building in this program jointly with other nations, you know, you have to consider like things that have happened, you know, in the internet in general, because like what we're essentially talking about is like an internet that helps people decide whether to kill people. And, you know, like you can observe for yourself how conspiracies they spread on social media, and how narratives build over time. Like you've seen it with, just really any like anti-vaxxing, QAnon, whatnot. I mean, and you really need to look at these phenomena, we call filter bubbles or hive minds, and, how the algorithms underlying these platforms unintentionally affects, what's happening in the real world. Well, I mean, within the drone program or in any drone program where you're, talking about using these collaborative data platforms where you're just, you're sharing information with other nations, and you're sharing, information between services and, between pilots and ground troops and whatnot. I mean, everybody's feeding into this. Like, you're going to have a lot of different perspectives, and any of those perspectives can be influenced by, a miscalculation, or, say even just the poor sleep habits of an analyst. And, the chances of errors like grow exponentially because of this. And these errors aren't inconsequential either. Like, they're not just a data glitch. They unfortunately end in the death of innocent non-combatants, human beings. And I mean, like,
and we need to look who's making this equipment right here, like the slide right here. Show that there's a financial incentive to doing this, not a moral.
I think there is a whole, I mean, it's such a big apparatus and such a huge agenda we are facing here that, for many observers, also for those who are interested in this topic and follow it for a couple of times, it's often difficult to, to follow up, because it's really complex.
Yeah, and I mean, we're obviously, like, we aren't particularly in favor of armed drones, obviously. Like we have our own, I guess, traumas linked to that. And I mean, we're, having to interact with, and choosing to interact with, a nation state that's concerned with their own security. And security it's not necessarily a purely selfish thing. I mean, you have to worry about your own citizens, and like you have to worry about the long-term implications of competing powers around the world who are building these systems too. Well, essentially what we're saying is that, there needs to be a power in the world that, is going to try to step back from this arms race that's occurring right now. Because, I mean, we like to think that everybody's going to use drones the same. And, we like to think that we can, create regulations on how autonomous systems and how robotic warfare will work in principle. And but software is really hard to regulate, and it's also just it's happening at such a speed that policymakers are having a really hard time keeping up with. So we need to focus on something that is concrete, that that is potentially it can be spread across the board. I mean, there's no reason other than for aggressive actions to arm a drone. You can use other means to protect bases. You can use other means to protect convoys. You can still use drones to collect intelligence. I mean, they're not. I mean, in wars and in national disasters, they're useful for things like that. They're useful for determining, like who's who and, you know, what's happening. It's not that we're like saying that the nation shouldn't be using these things for, you know, gaining information. What we're saying is like when you're putting a missile on it, you're dramatically increasing the speed and lowering the threshold for like killing people, you know, and by doing so, it's like it's giving policymakers and it's giving, you know, commanders this kind of like easy short-term card to, you know, like solve their problems when they really need to be focusing on long-term solutions. And it's
I mean, if you wonder where all this is going, all you need to do is go online and look at the advertisements from corporations like Northrop Grumman, like Airbus, like all of these different corporations that some of are German, European, American, from the Baltic region, Canadian. And if you take a look at that, you can see by the slide that I just put up right now, that basically Airbus is going after a multi-domain combat cloud. Now, if that doesn't scare the crap out of anyone in Germany, in America, anywhere in the world, collaborative combat across all domains, is that what we want?
Particularly when they're putting up satellites with like high bandwidth connections, like, and, you know, I mean, yeah, like for a technician to hear that, they're just like, okay, well, more bandwidth means more drones in the sky. More bandwidth means more, you know, like, I guess, higher quality footage, more sensor data, you know, but like, it's just that. I mean, there's going to be a
single point of failure.
It's an over reliance on, you know, these technological systems to solve problems when they're not the right tool to do it. And I mean, what people really need are like solutions that to the problems that exacerbate their current conditions, like that are making life tough and making it difficult to that are making the resources they have in their environment scarce. It's, I mean, you're yeah.
And if we must spend money on such things, I mean, you know, there is climate change. If there's a financial aspect,
exactly. They also, I mean, yeah.
And if you look at all of this, I mean, this is the enterprise, and the enterprise includes the United States. Let's just be clear on this. I mean, let's be real on this. Let's talk to our legislators. Here it is again, international partners. I mean, I know, you know, and here are some of the numbers. These are the personal numbers that I carry. This is from an award that I received. 121,000 insurgent targets, it says. 3,700 combat U2 and all of the missions. 450. You know, I mean, it goes over.
So huge also that, you know, it's just, people just see numbers and they're like, okay. But I think that's also a reason why in the German drone debate, we somehow need to hear people who are affected by people who are affected by these weapons. Like the guy I showed you at the beginning, people who lost relatives because of that, because often you hear, also here in Germany, in the context of the debate, you hear that, you know, phrases like, German politicians saying, yeah, we will not do the same like the US, what they are doing. There's also a question here by Matthias Monroy, who says that he's first of all asking why all the drone pilots or the operators are working from the United States, and then he's pointing out that the German army says it will operate its, you know, the operators of the German army will be on the ground. So he's asking why all the operators in the United States, and, you know, the army says their operators will be on the ground. Like,
Then why do they need a satellite?
sorry?
Then why does the German army need a satellite?
Yeah, good question. I was also wondering
Why are they
myself.
purchasing a satellite?
Yeah, doesn't make sense. Doesn't seem to be transparent what they are saying in this point. And what I also noticed, I'm not sure if you also saw this, but in the context of the German drone debate, I see also many, or at least some German journalists and academics who kind of lobbying for this warfare and who kind of try to defame every peace activist as some kind of naive person who doesn't know much about the technology and stuff. But if you confront them and say, okay, listen, of course there are activists who don't know all these technical details, but there are also people like Lisa and Sean and other people who know what they are talking about, then they are kind of ignoring it and act as if it's not important. So they have their agenda, and I think that the people who stand up against this kind of warfare, they really have to push, and they have to be loud.
I mean, it's a scary world that, you know, is having, I mean, there's over 90 countries right now developing, you know, drone technology. And I mean, space is becoming far more accessible, like, and it will become far more accessible in the next 10 years. Satellites are becoming smaller. The telemetry equipment that goes on a drone is becoming smaller, so you can put, you know, the same things that are in a like a Global Hawk inside a smaller drone, you know, and you know, and that's changing the playing field in some ways. So I mean, from like a military decision-making standpoint, you really have to like, I mean, you're doing your own, like, you're doing your own risk analysis. I mean, and you're responding to situations. That's the job of the military, is to have plans and contingencies to respond to crises. But the job of policymakers is, how do you guide the society, you know, in a way that, like, first of all, just avoids these crises in the first place? How do you get different countries on board to build trust relationships so that, you know, so that these tools aren't going to become necessary? Because I mean, Lisa and I can both tell you, I mean, anybody who who can see the logical conclusion of this is, I mean, you have a weapon that lowers the threshold for war. It makes it easier to be aggressive. Like we've seen that with Armenia and Azerbaijan. I mean, you know, it's like, if you think about the whole world sort of following these courses of actions, you know, you have stealth technology, you know, in conjunction with the miniaturization of nuclear weapons, you know, hypersonic missiles, these types of things. I mean, there's not regulatory frameworks around this stuff that works. You know, and regulation's only really as good as you can enforce it. But why aren't we trying to find, like, develop governing bodies to create these enforcement mechanisms? Because I mean, at the end of the day, like, you know, these zero-sum games, these, like, you know, winner takes all, everybody else loses, is you know, is a pretty dire conclusion to the human story, I would say. And I think it would, you know, like, it would behoove people who are a little bit forward thinking and trying to figure out, like, how do we, like, make sure that our grandkids, you know, have a good life, you know, and not just us. Like, how do we make sure that, you know, the people who come after us aren't going to be in this post-apocalyptic hellhole? Like, and, you know, with what's happening with the climate right now, I mean, it's almost like there's perverse incentives in the world to actually, like, exacerbate these you know, these climate catastrophes. Like, melting the Arctic so you can build new sea lanes, or you know, like chasing populations out of areas so you can start mining them. I mean, like, all of these goods are necessary, I guess, to make, you know, our economy function as is. But like, there needs to be like a point where we just decide, yeah, like, okay, we're going to take a different path. We need to work together, you know, and create a joint human story here. Like, it's not Afghan versus the US. It's not like, I mean, we need to build this joint narrative around us to save everybody. And that's what it's about, is getting people on the same page of like, you know, we can sit here and kill each other, and what do we have in the end? We have a barren rock that looks like Mars, you know?
What I'd like to do real quick is, if Emron is okay with this, is I have the photos that you sent me. Please. And maybe you can, I'm going to share the screen again, and maybe you can explain who some of these people are so that we can start talking about the humanity. Because that's what's... So, can you see it?
Not yet. Give me a second. Now I see it. Yeah. This is a young man I met in Khost province in southeastern Afghanistan. His name was Noodle Hadi. And he lost his father, who was a cab driver, by a drone attack. So all these attacks occurred during the Obama era. And he lost his father also in Khost. He was driving with some passengers to a destination, and a Hellfire missile hit them, and all of them were declared as terrorists. And I think, as far as I can remember, he also went to local authorities and tried to complain about what happened. And they told him that according to unknown intelligence sources, your father has been a militant, a Taliban leader, or at least in connection with them. And he and other relatives of him, and you know, people from Khost, all of them confirmed that this was not the case. But yeah, you can't do much when something like that happens there. You just have to go on, and that's what he was doing. Maybe you can, yeah, go on this picture.
This picture?
Exactly, yeah. This is a man called Pastakhan. He is from a nomad tribe. They're called Kuchi in Afghanistan. He's also from Khost province, and his case was really severe because he lost more than a dozen tribe members and relatives by drone strike, which also took place in Khost province near the Afghan-Pakistani border. And this happened when these nomads, you know, Afghanistan and Pakistan is separated by a colonial border, the Durand Line, which affected the life of Afghan nomads. And but they are still moving around through the border. And this was in June 2016 when they wanted to visit the funeral. 14 people wanted to visit the funeral, but they went there earlier to prepare the funeral. So they passed the border, because you know the border guards also allowed nomads sometimes to move freely without problems. So 14 members of the tribe went to the Pakistani side and prepared the grave of a tribal leader who died. He was an old man, so he died naturally. And then they wanted to move back to their villages because they had some time. And this was just a few miles. You have to imagine that it's not really far. And when they moved back, they were attacked by American drones, and 14 people, all of them, 2 pickups, they were killed. And Pastor Khan himself wasn't even there. There is a guy next to him. Also, you can see him a bit in this picture. But he was there, for example, later. He arrived at the scene and collected the corpses and the parts of the bodies. And Pastor Khan lost his brothers and his father. And he became responsible of more than 50 family members, tribe members, who all, because they lost their breadwinners, because so many men were killed of these families. So he had to take care of all of them. And he was also, although he didn't witness the attack, he was totally traumatized. When I met him, he was kind of paranoid. He was always looking around. And the fellow who was accompanying him, he said that since this attack happened, this guy changed. He has some psychological problems. He's traumatized. He's not normal anymore. And this case became a bit more relevant because, first of all, local authorities and the Americans, NATO forces in Afghanistan, claimed that they killed 14 Taliban fighters. And Pastor Khan himself, he told me in the back, when I heard such news, I thought it's true. They killed Taliban fighters, that's it. But now I saw what happened to me and my family. Nobody of us has been tied to any militant group. And now, even our people are described as militants. And it was for him such a big scandal. And I think at the end, I'm pretty sure that the United Nations also rejected what the Americans and their Afghan allies said and confirmed that all these people were civilians.
Here's another photo.
Yeah, this is again Kabir al-Usai, who was the guy which I showed at first at the video, who lost his brother in a drone strike. This is Wardak province, Saidabad district, where al-Usai is coming from, and I visited his village, and I also mentioned a couple of other cases from the area about civilian drone strike casualties. And what I want to point out in this context is that, during my during this research trip, I tried to localize as many drone victims as possible in a very short period of time. So within a few days, I could localize, I think, around 15 or 20 civilian casualties just from this district and the areas around it. So Wardak province and some of its districts. Just within a few days, I could do that, thanks to local help, local sources, other reporting colleagues on the ground. And, it was such a scandal that later, I think in the same year later, the Obama administration, at the end of 2016, it was the Obama administration, July 2016, when they claimed that they killed some thousands of militants by drone strikes, and between 32 and 64 civilians, and that's it. And just the research of my book from these areas was already more than 30, 40 civilian casualties. So the thing is that many people, many journalists also do not visit such places. And if there would be a big network collecting data for years, for example, like it happened in Syria, then I think the whole picture would be even worse.
So I put up the next picture. Can you see it?
Yes, this is also Wardak province, Saidabad district. As you can see, Afghanistan and its landscapes are often always beautiful, and people on the ground would love to enjoy their nature and just enjoy their lives. But if you have such a sky inside Abad, then it's better to not run around like this kid, because as you know, if the sky is blue, the kids over there know that if the sky is blue, you shouldn't go out, because maybe drone hits you.
What a horrible way for a child to live. We really need to think about these things when we talk about drones, instead of thinking just about the technology, the humanity, and the way that we humans create an other. And today, the other is quote unquote terrorists. What's the other going to be tomorrow, as this equipment propagates around the globe, as this network gets larger and larger, and the threshold for war gets smaller and smaller, and the funding for soft power and the attention to soft power gets less and less, while at the same time we've got all of these natural tragedies that are occurring.
Yeah.
So it's up to us to have these conversations. It's up to us.
Yeah, I wanted to ask Emron. I mean, when you're talking to people like on the grounds, and you're talking to people who've lived under these drones. I mean, like on a day-to-day basis, how, you know, like I'm sure you've asked them like how their daily lives are affected. Like, I mean, how, you know, like obviously we all have our routines and stuff. Like, what are the difficulties, you know, that they're having to deal with, you know?
Yeah, for example, these people from Wardak province around Kabir al-Dusai, who lost his brother, you know, a lot of them are farmers, a lot of them are people who work the mountains, and also a lot of them are just cab drivers who drive around. So they have to leave their houses, and they are affected by that kind of by these drones, by these weapons. I mean, it decreased during the last months. I think, I mean, especially rural areas, and in the rural areas, airstrikes and drone strikes decreased because of the US Taliban deal, which was signed a year ago. So we see now almost nothing. There's still airstrikes conducted by Afghan forces, but the American strikes really decreased. But especially before that, I mean, I've just returned from Afghanistan, but I didn't do that much drone research this time. But for example, during the research trip, when I made these pictures, strikes really increased because it was the beginning of the Trump era. So strikes even increased, and people were extremely affected by it. They had to work, but they had to do their daily routine, but they couldn't really do it, or they did it with much fear. And they also told their children regularly to be aware, to, you know, not play around too much outside. If you hear such aircraft in the air, or if the sky is clear. So basically everything they did was tied to it. And I also noticed that often when I was there, people were just looking at the sky and, like, you know, if something is coming or not, because they were getting used to it so much. Another thing that I noticed is that a lot of them felt that they are localized through their phones. So they were aware of, for example, many went to work, but they left their phones at home, or they didn't use any phones anymore, which is also a problem there, because of course, I mean, just look around. We are addicted to our smartphones. People over there, you know, not everyone has a smartphone, but they have these cheap China phones just for communication. And then what they started doing was going out without any phone. And or sometimes some people believe that it's enough to take the SIM card out of the phone, and then you cannot be localized. And yeah, you can see on a daily basis how much they were affected by this kind of warfare.
When I think about somebody like a taxi driver, I mean, you can take people from point A to B at point B and never know what like they do. I mean,
Yeah.
you can have conversations with people, like, small talk, whatever. You can even pick people up, every day, like during the week, because they asked you to. Like, it doesn't necessarily mean that you're responsible for anything that's happening. It doesn't mean that you're a connector, but often from the sky, that's what it looks like.
Yeah, exactly. I interviewed the family of a cab driver who was driving Mullah Akhtar Mansour, who was the Taliban leader after Mullah Omar, and who was killed by an American drone strike in Pakistan's Balochistan province. And the drone strike killed the Taliban leader and the cab driver. Nobody asked about the cab driver, and the cab driver was just the guy you just described. He was just doing his work. The Taliban leader disguised himself as a businessman. I mean, he wasn't armed. Also, he just took the cab to go from A to B, and then he was hit. And the family of this cab driver filed, some kind of complaint in Pakistan to get some justice, but it didn't happen because people were just like, he was also part of the Taliban, and we don't buy that he was poor cab driver, which is not a rare thing in these regions.
And of course, if you're like a high-level militant, you're going to use measures to hide your identity.
Exactly.
So
there's another question here. I don't know if you saw it, Imran.
I saw it. Which one do you mean? You mean the one regarding this one? There's a question like, what could we learn from the fight against nuclear weapons in the case of the fight against drone warfare, like or the fight against ABC weapons? Are there things that we could imitate for our struggle? Can we learn from this kind of struggle?
That international agreements are necessary.
Yeah, I think so too.
I mean, basically that we need to be taking action and speaking to our policymakers. Germany is in a unique position right now because they have not said yes to arming drones. There's another question about the significance of what Germany is saying no to the drone weapons. And maybe I think Senta asked, and what significance would Germany saying no to drone weapons have for the people of Afghanistan and for the peacekeeping forces in the USA, for example? What if more people say no? And from my vantage point, from the people that I spoke to in Afghanistan, it would be huge. It would be the only country saying, come on, let's stop. Let's think about the human lives.
Mm-hmm.
The Afghans that are like just posted as cab driver, student, without names. So, but Imran's the perfect person to answer this.
Yeah, exactly. And we have 5 minutes left. I had another personal question to you, because it's always interesting for me, and it's 2021, 20 years after, September 11 attacks and the start of the war on terror. Because I thought, I recently, a few months ago, I had a conversation with a man called Eric Edstrom, who used to be an American soldier who fought in Afghanistan. I asked him the similar question, because I told him, you and we are both generation 9/11, and how much did 9/11 had an impact on what you did and what you still do?
I mean, I was standing in a Radio Shack after a dental appointment with my mom. We were getting our computer fixed so that we could talk to my dad, who was in Kuwait at the time. You know, and you know, you see an attack like on your country, of course, like I'm worried about my father who's in, you know, like somewhere else, especially after they attacked the Pentagon. You know, and of course that definitely like activated me, and that activated, well, like most people my age. And then, you know, at this point, like, I'm just wondering, I mean, like the 3,000 people that died in the World Trade Center, and I know this is like, you know, the ultimate taboo, like, you know, I'm not discounting their lives or anything, but was it really worth all the death that's happened? You know, is it worth all the pain and suffering that we've created over there? Like, you know, like, have we not gotten our retribution yet? Like, and what the hell did Afghanistan have anything to do with any of this? Like, they were all Saudis.
Yeah, thanks for that. I'm trying to explain that since I'm 9 years old when the attacks took place.
I was working near the attacks, and my family built the World Trade Center. They were the iron workers that built it. And so it had a large impact on me. It had a huge impact on me because of my familial relationship, because the first time it exploded, my family was downstairs in the basement. But here's the thing. That had a large impact on all of us. Why is it that the thousands upon thousands of Afghans who have died doesn't have the same impact? In my view, my lives, American lives, are no more or less valuable than the lives of anybody in any other country. A human life is a human life. And when it's taken, I mean, there needs to be some, I mean, there just needs to be some respect for all human life. And I'm not seeing that. And I don't think that there's an international pecking order to this kind of thing. And I don't think that there should be.
Thanks for these final words, Lisa. I think they're really good final words because we're now finished with our time. And I would really like to thank both of you for joining me, having this important talk. And also thanks to Elsa and the organizers for this important event. We really hope that a lot of people, including a lot of politicians and military officials, and you know, all these people who keep talking but don't know really much, just, you know, fell and believed propaganda, that they listen to these things and that they also think about it, and the next time they decide something, they should, you know, remember these important words and personal accounts of people who knew what they are talking about. Thanks a lot.
It's 1 o'clock.
Thanks everybody for having us.
Yeah, definitely. I want to thank the organizers for this. You know, like I mean, I'm just hoping that, you know, there's some fruit that comes of it.
Yeah, of course. There's also next panel, which will be on March 18th. It's about the international banning of drones, of armed drones, and I hope that also this panel will reach many people. So stay tuned.